guys, Hengist here from House Hengist Comics. A big welcome back to the channel, Beansters, and our new subscribers too. Today we're back on the front line. It's episode 26 in Blitzkrieg, dial M for murder. First, our weekly news segment. We're also going to be looking at how the propaganda was propagated through the cinema today, briefly in this episode. But first, I want us to take a quick look at the Wild Western campaign and its projections, and notably the non-extension of the Maginot Line behind Belgium, as you can see. But in Belgium, around Brussels, we've got a huge concentration of heavily fortified positions. These positions fortified. And you've got Anvers, Liège, Namur, and you've got the Tête de Pont to Ghent, and in the middle, the KW line. But what the cinema is basically doing, where people congregate at this period, and it was a great place to really express those propaganda ideas and for morale. We've got great cinema, great movies being made. But in these sort of masses of people, we can basically disseminate a huge amount of truth or untruth. And we've seen what the radio and its effect has had in previous episodes. But this is the sort of stuff you'd be getting a newsreel that would come in and, you know, latest from the Western Front. We've got the Deutsche Wochenschau, which was their weekly update, the United News being used in the United States, and of course, in Japan as well, they were using the same sort of approach. So the cinema basically proved a great ground, a bit like we'd turn on the TV today. But importantly, the images that we are seeing on these reels may have been made by propaganda. And so it's important when you're looking at World War II photographs to try and understand whether these are real or propaganda. But on the front line, the situation is pretty bad, not quite like the abstract that's being portrayed in the cinema, because Poland, Norway, Denmark, and basically Luxembourg have all fallen. The British, who are basically hastily arriving in the dial line, have found it incomplete, and this is critical, although certain parts of this particular dial line were heavily fortified. So hence why we've probably called it dial M for murder. Let's now look at the Belgian forces that we've got today. Effectively, these are all confident trained, but they're green, that is reluctant until proven otherwise. Mainly infantry with some engineers as well. They're going to be supported by machine guns and of course bunkers, and hopefully they will also get some artillery which will come online. This is really critical for them to stop such a wave of attacks. Okay, let's take a look at the German forces today and their assault force into this vector on the dial line. They've got confident trained and confident veteran infantry supported by an engineer platoon. There'll also be with them a heavy machine gun platoon useful for suppression, some mortars as well. But I think they're going to be needing quite a lot of medics. They've got approximately 5 platoons of infantry they can use plus scouts, but the artillery now is available online, and that gives us some unique assets, including the 88 battery being used as artillery firing airburst ammunition, the 105, the good old 105, which can split its fire as well. Okay, let's get into the research and the set. And critical to this is the contrast between the Maginot Line not being completed, but this area was really concentrated, and as you can see, you've got an anti-tank ditch which basically stretches from Antwerp down to Namur. There's a gap at Gembloux, that's critical, and we'll see that later in the campaign where the armour meets. But most of these positions were not fortified. There weren't a lot of infantry trenches. There was limited ammunition in some of the bunkers, although there are a lot of machine gun ports, as you can see here. Freeze this and examine it. Really critical and great battles for solo play as well. Leuven, big actions on the 15th and 16th. A lot of these forts had twin gun batteries, so they were quite powerful. And we've got the Coignet or Cointet gates, which also extend along part of that anti-tank defences, as you can see here. Very difficult to progress through, that is if the armor goes that way. But I wanted to really look at the bunkers today, and their twin ported machine guns, rate of fire 6, difficult, very strong, can withstand direct fire weaponry. So I built these out of Foamex. Again, I can't express how great this product is. You can sand it down, it's a building insulation foam. Great, cut it out. Here I'm beveling basically with the end of a paintbrush, get a lovely quick effect. And they painted up really well. I'm really pleased with these bunkers. Perhaps not as historically accurate as they could be, but you know, I've done the best I can. So let's look at the mission. What is that all about? Well, I was really taken by this particular map and looking at the bunker positions and the fields of fire. And I wanted to explore this, especially since there was a big action on the 14th and 15th. I think the British were involved in that one. But ultimately, what I'm trying to replicate is a full frontal assault. Now, let's look at the terrain. Very nasty, open. You're going to need a lot of smoke, a lot of bombardment and artillery assets. There's fortifications on these roadblocks, as you can see here. And basically, the Germans have got to prosecute their attack through a vector and try and knock out these two bunkers or break the enemy. So it's 12 turns, 10 victory points per bunker. Now, we used cards, again, blind deployment as such. There are some blanks in there as well for both sides, so you're not sure where your forces are going to concentrate before the get-go. For the Belgians, this is critical because also the Germans were playing preliminary bombardment, so they would fire on a position before they knew what it was. So the mission is quite a tough one, and here we see the ace revealing the company command position. One card was underneath a bombardment template, the other was a dummy, so that was quite lucky. We've also got a joker played. You can swap the joker for another card if it's advantageous to do so, and that's what the Belgian commander decided to do in this position, moved an infantry forward because of where the joker was deployed. So ultimately, once the cards are down, you can then redeploy your forces up to 12 inches from those cards. The Belgians are not dug in, and the preliminary bombardment proved to be ineffective. In this case, it got a pin on the AA position. You can also see we were checking here for both bunkers for ammunition. On a 1, it's low, and if they roll another one every time they fire, it's out. So let's get into the battle action. God, was this a dramatic one, guys. The weather conditions are good. We can see the Germans mainly occupy the corn and the wood line with both batteries forward, which is quite useful. You can see a little bit of the swamp area. They place a preliminary smoke bombardment. That's 1 D6 on a skill check. You can land anywhere. The infantry move out and move forward with their larger confident train platoons at the van. That's where they were deployed, but they're mixed. And as you can see, immediately a trench line is placed in immediate ambush, and that is unoccupied, but it does have wire, and the wire will be critical. You can see the bunkers have gone on to overwatch because of the smoke, and they're waiting. We've also got the AA position as well on overwatch as well, with just the 1 IC sitting in that trench going, oh my God, how many Germans are approaching, and they move rapidly. Believe me, they were coming straight at this position with a view to turn the flank and then go into the woods from behind and take the bunkers. But the Belgians start moving across as the Germans progress at a rapid rate. Cards start to be played, and a brilliantly fortuitous card for the Belgians. They get their artillery straight away as their troops race down that trench line to try and cover that flank, which is open, wide open. And basically they start bringing their artillery down, as you can see here. They do pin, and they don't do casualties, but they want to slow down the Belgians. Their AA platoon starts opening fire as well. It isn't very effective either. The Germans counter, but their smoke is basically not proving successful. It lands in the wrong place. We get artillery from the Airburst 88, very successful. Take out a team. We also get small arms fire from the Germans as they advance, taking out another team. But a couple of teams start to get bogged down in this swampy area, and we also get the Belgians no longer reluctant. At the beginning of their turn, they roll a 6. They're deciding to fight today, gentlemen, and fight they will. And what we see is the Germans moving forward rapidly towards the wire, and it will be the wire that's a problem as artillery pounds them coming down into this position. The energetic officer has done well to basically unpin the forces, but the bunkers prepare to open fire, thinking they've got them defilade to a veteran troop. But that is basically scuppered. We now see more troops bogged down, more smoke landing. But some of these smoke missions from the mortars are failing to hit their targets and landing all over the place as artillery continues to pepper the German infantry. But the saves have been really good, and the Germans are moving forward into this smoke with a view that they're going to assault straight away with 2 platoons. However, even though their flak guns are firing and with no smoke are firing effectively and getting pins down, their 105 batteries is not doing very well at all. And as the Germans close, the Belgians have managed to get into the trenches.
But on this flank, we can see here huge amounts of infantry now moving up towards the centre. The bunker has gone on to Overwatch because it was smoke. And the smoke is now being used not to cover the bunkers but the assault, and that was probably the correct thing to do. But disaster. 7 teams went on that wire, and 5 of them get trapped in that razor wire as the Belgians get engineers in reserve arriving behind the trench line system. So we've really got a big situation as the bunkers start opening fire on the flanks and casualties start to mount, especially to the veteran infantry going towards the roadblock. And here they're under fire and taking withering fire from BL2, and BL2 was to be highly destructive. Now, trapped on this wire, we've got smoke, we've got deep cover or double concealment in play. So casualties are basically not mounting. They try to fire blind, which would have been nasty, but it was immediately jokered by the Germans, and a good card move that was. But the machine gun fire from BL2 is wrecking the flank attack. Again, the airburst artillery comes in from the 88s, and it is really effective, again, knocking out another team and putting another pin on it. It's very tense on that wire as the Germans launch with what's left of their veterans at the end of the trench past the bunker system, avoiding the wire. They're paranoid of the fire. They miss in combat but use a card. It wasn't joking. And effectively a fight takes place. But the Belgians fight back and kill the lead team. They're out of 4 inches. They can't prosecute that attack. Meanwhile, the Belgians start digging in. It's taken 5 turns. A sniper opens fire, gets a pin basically, again on those veterans who are now practically suppressed behind those works under withering fire and artillery. When we see the Germans get an airstrike with bombers, this is a double width template, very nasty. But they're in woods, very difficult target. They hit the teams but do no real damage, and the Germans basically were really hissing at the Luftwaffe again. Still trapped on the wire. The smoke's gone, machine gun fire comes out of those trenches. More smoke now lands thanks to the mortars. But we've got a huge battle going on. Defilade fire is then played by the Belgians, and that basically shoots as they get 3 teams of basically scouts that arrive. Not much use, but their artillery is proving really effective today from supporting forts, and that is bringing down and causing masses of casualties, as is the bunker, which is starting to get huge casualties. There is a no sweat card played, which means they can move at the double, but they're still beginning to take losses, and this poor veteran platoon is trapped and ultimately is destroyed, along with the bunker, which gets an outstanding series of fire, and 2 platoons are wiped out. More artillery comes in, again the flaks firing with their airburst, and we now see the German pioneers come up. They only clear 1 piece of wire. It's a disaster, but they launch in with their infantry, and we then see the flamethrowers in action, and they are devastating, killing 4 teams basically as they go towards the trench line. There's not a lot in that trench line, and the Germans press, but they are so depleted. Their pioneers come in, they've killed loads of troops through those flamethrowers, as I've said, and small arms fire into the assault. But with so many troops trapped on the wire, they just can't get enough bodies into the contact zone. And although they push in, and they were to ultimately do really well, they re-roll 1 miss, which was to keep them in the fight. But again, that infantry is still stuck there, trapped on that wire. And there's just not enough bodies, even though they push through and the Belgians fight like, I mean, grim determination is the understatement. They fight so desperately well. But the Germans have the numbers, they push through into the trench, and at that point, disaster. Every platoon is well below half, and both German platoons break.
But the Belgians didn't break, and so it was a well-deserved, remarkable Belgian victory for 25 points. So, what can we say in postscript? Well, this was just an incredible game, full of twists and turns, exciting, challenging decisions to be made. It went really well, and there's some really interesting observations that we're beginning to pick up, and we're going to release in later videos. But the Belgian positions did hold, and it will be very interesting to see how you would have tackled this and how you would have done it. So please put your comments below. But in the meantime, we've got loads coming up. Obviously, Hanau, Gembloux, Gap, Meuse, the Sedan, and Holland. But let's never forget, and it's always time to remember, especially those that fell in the early war. So this is Blitzkrieg. It's over and out from me. Stay safe, stay tuned, and best wishes. Bye for now.